Hello everyone, today we're going to be making a rotating hoofstock feeder. I made it initially for hoofstock, but I've also tried it with larger primates and I've seen similar designs used for all sorts of animals, so really let your imagination go wild. It is a very simple construction that looks a lot more complicated than it is, but it does require a little bit of timber work. We're going to be doing some lap joints and things like that, which I find exciting, but might be a little bit daunting to some of you, but we'll go through it and I will try and explain to you as best I can how to effectively achieve the results that you want. So, without further ado, we'll get started. What you're going to need is you're going to need about 2 meters, I'd say, of 3x2 timber, tannalized if you've got it, because obviously that will last longer outside. You're going to need obviously your standard fittings, your kind of screws and nuts and things like that. You're going to need a piece of thread bar. I'm going to use M10 thread bar, which is going to be about, I'd say, if you get a 20 centimeter, so 200mm piece to 300mm piece, that should do it fine. And then obviously we're going to cut it to size, and we're going to need 4 pots. So currently I don't have the pots. I have someone going out to get me the pots at the moment. But what they're going to be is they're just going to be the receptacles that we're going to hold the food in, and then we're going to drill some holes in them so that when the feeder spins, the food will drop out. But we're maintaining that the area where the food is going to be nice and easy to clean. So while I'm waiting for the pots, we'll get started. We'll cut the timber. Okie dokie, let's get started. Okay, so there are going to be 2 timber components to this build. We're going to be having what I call a bridle, which is going to be basically a V shape. And what that's going to be is that's going to be the part that you're going to secure onto the wall of your enclosure, or secure anywhere you can for to support the weight. And then we're going to have a cross piece which is going to make an X shape, and that's going to be where we're going to attach the actual feeding pots, and it's going to be the component that will spin. So we're going to need a 40cm by 40cm bridle, and we're going to need a 60cm by 60cm cross piece. So I'm trying to use up some of the scraps of timber that I've got. So I've got a 110mm piece here, so I'm going to get one side of the V out and one side of the cross piece out as well. So to start with, we're going to cut out the first half of the bridle, and we're going to measure to 400mm, so 40cm. We're going to make a little mark there with our tape, and then we're going to get our speed square. This is to make sure that our edges are nice and at right angles, and we're just going to mark it there. I'm going to use a circular saw. Last time I used a chop saw. I do prefer using a chop saw for things like this, but not everyone's got access to a chop saw. Probably more of you have access to a circular saw. And the other thing to remember is that what you can do with a circular saw you can also do with a hand saw. It's just a little bit faster if you use a circular saw, and it's a little bit less trying on the arms. So what we'll do, the first thing that you need to remember when you're operating a circular saw, which people seem to always forget, is it will cut best if you're only just cutting deeper than the edge of the piece of cutting. So we're going to measure it out and make sure that our blade is just sticking just below it. And we're going to tension it again, and we'll be ready to cut. I'm going to go get some PPE because I have forgot it, but safety first. Okay, we have our duffs on, we have our eyes on. We're not going to have any shards go into our eyes, and we're not going to get tinnitus. So next up, to use the speed square to line it up. You then go back out a little bit, because what you don't want to do is you don't want the saw to start chopping straight onto the wood. You want to run the saw gently into it. And boom. That's pretty much perfect. Put that on the side for a moment. We're going to get our tape, and we're going to get our pencil. We're going to mark up next piece. Check. a mil shorter, but with this kind of work it doesn't much matter. Okay, we have our 4 pieces that we need for the timber framework, and we're going to start lapping them. So what this means is that we're going to be cutting out a nubbin half the thickness of the wood and the same width of the wood, so that they will sit like that for the V and like that for the crosspiece. But obviously they will be sunk in, so it will just be all flush if we get it right. Let's give it a crack. So the most important part in this, and the part that most people get wrong, is the measuring. So I find that the best way to measure is not in fact to measure the actual timber itself with a tape measure, but to measure it with the piece of timber that you want to attach. So do that. I'm going to make sure that it's flush. And I'm not going to leave my pencil. There we go. Surprisingly enough, that is level. Right, now we're going to measure the timber. It's very important to make sure the timber is the same size. It's the same size enough, which is as good as we're going to get. So, we're going to measure how deep this is. So this is a 46mm deep piece of timber, so we're going to need to make a mark at 23mm. That wasn't at 23mm there, that was at 30mm. Don't ask me why I did that. Senior moment. And then we're going to make a mark that goes straight across like that. I don't know if you can see that, but we now have a mark splitting that in half, and a mark which is the width of the piece of timber that we're going to be cutting, that we're going to be putting together. Sorry. Now, if you want to go full anal, you can join it all up together, connect the dots so to speak, but personally it's a little bit too much for me. The important thing is to get that one marked so that you can set the depth of your saw blade. So we're going to loosen it up again. Okay, so the saw blade is now set up so the depth is only half a piece of timber, and we're going to cut it. So this would be the most important cut on each piece of timber. It's going to be the initial one into here. After this, it's not inconsequential, but it's not as important. Good. And now we're going to make a series of small cuts. Okay, so now you should have a piece of timber that looks somewhat like this. And then all we're going to do is we're going to get a really great hammer and we're going to smash those bits out. Choose your weapon. Okay. So that is the worst of it out, and we're just going to neaten it up with a chisel. We're not building furniture here, it doesn't have to be beautiful, it just has to work. So you can see I've now cut out a half flat from there. If you have a little look, yeah, that's going to be close enough. Next stage. Hold that. I forget my pencil over on the other table again. As I said, use the other piece of wood to mark where you can, because you can't get better than that, you can't get a football perfect fit. And now, because we've already got the blade set to the depth and we know where we're cutting to, it doesn't really matter if we put it, if we put all the other markings on, because we know what we're doing. Hope. So we'll give it a go. That's not bad. But you can see they'll fit together nice and neatly. And all we've got to do is fix them together. But first, I want to make our X, because we could go and get out the impact driver and start putting all that together now, but we might as well do it when we're completely finished with our cutting. So, these ones are a little bit more finicky, because obviously we're not just cutting into the edge, we're cutting in the middle, and we want it to be dead on, because otherwise I will cry. So, we'll double check the measurement. So this one is 58, therefore halfway point is going to be 29. So 290 mil. Boom. This one, if I can keep the tape on it, it's 59. So do it there. Get our speed square. If you haven't got one of these, I'd highly recommend investing in it, especially if you're going to be doing a bit of cutting. These are fantastic. So we're going to get our halfway points. Now, to work out the width again, because I forgot, that's not what we need to work out. We need to work out this width, which is going to be, let's say 72. It's just a smidge over 72 mil, but it's better to do it a little bit small and then just persuade it into place than it is to make it too wide and then it's all ganky and janky and it doesn't work. So we said 72, didn't we? Yeah, boy. So half 72 is 36. So, using my supreme mathematical prowess, we're gonna go 36 mil in that direction, and we're gonna go 36 mil in that direction. Even it up with our speed square. And that should be the width of our piece. I don't know how well you can see it. Equidistant between either end. So put that one to the side, and we'll do the same on this side. Right, now we've measured them, we're going to PPE up again, and we're going to cut these out. So the first two lines that we're going to have to cut, that we're going to have to be very careful about cutting, are going to be this line and this line. And then we'll just cut out strips in the centre to do exactly the same as we did on the other joint. Get the duffs on and get to work. Point of note on chisels, you don't have to buy super expensive ones. What's more important is learning how to sharpen them, because a sharp, cheap chisel will do you much better than a blunt £80 chisel. Okay, we've hogged out both sides of this side, and now we're going to have to see whether they fit together. Okay, so we tried putting them together and we found that one of the sides is just ever so slightly too narrow. So this one is, in my opinion, it's actually a little bit large, this hole. I'm mucked up on that. And this one is just ever so slightly too small. So what you could do is you could get the circular saw on it again and try and just shave off a millimetre or so. But you run the risk of overcutting and then you shaft it. So what we're going to try and do is we're just going to try and very gently take off a teeny little sliver. So we've almost kind of beveled that edge. And we're going to see whether we can persuade it in now. That worked pretty damn well actually. And you see, once we've got it in with a little bit of persuasion from your persuasion mallet, you can get it fixed and it's going to stay there. We're going to put some screws in it obviously anyway, but that's not bad at all. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start to screw them all together. So I'm going to go get my impact driver and my drill, and we're going to screw them all together. I've got my drill with my pilot bit in it, I've got my impact driver with my driving bit in it, and we're going to put them all together. And the thing to remember with this is that you don't want to be putting one straight through the centre, because we're going to be wanting to put our thread bar through that centre, aren't we? So, near the edge, but not too close to the edge, it's a fine line. And there we have it. There's our cross piece, all ready to go. Yeah, that ain't gonna go nowhere. So that's all done. And we're gonna quickly do the same with our bridle. There's our bridle. And there's our cross piece. The basics are here. We're just going to need to put them all together, and we also need to put on the plastic tubs. But that is the donkey work done. Obviously it would have been faster with a chop saw and easier on the hand, but that was just to show that it is possible without a chop saw. Usually you just see someone smashing it out in a workshop, but if you don't have a workshop, you need to know how to do things the other way. And like I said, you can use the exact same procedure to do it with a hand saw. It will just take you a lot longer, and you will get dead arm by the end of it probably. But it's not complicated, it's quite a simple joint. Okay, so we've screwed our pieces together. The next step is going to be marking out the centre point to put our thread bar through. So the way to do that, very simple. You get yourself a straight edge, any kind will do, doesn't much matter, it doesn't have to be a set square. I'm just doing this because this is the first straight edge that I have to hand. You go from one corner to the other, and you mark a little line, and then find the corner, and you mark again from the other two corners together, and there you have it. X marks the spot. That is the point that we're going to drill through. Now, I want to recess my nuts a little bit so that it's going to sit flush. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to have to drill a larger hole in first for the nut and the washer to sit in. And it's going to be close, but I think we are going to be able to manage it. So what I've done is I've picked out a bit. This is a Forstner bit, which they're a bit of a specialty, but they're very good for drilling kind of quite large diameter flat holes in a surface. And I picked this one because I can see that it's ever so slightly larger than my washer, because otherwise the washer wouldn't fit in and it wouldn't sit in there with it. So before we drill the main hole through for the thread bar, we are going to drill the recess, because otherwise it's just an absolute nightmare. These work best with a pillar drill. If you have a pillar drill, use a pillar drill. I don't have a pillar drill, so I am the pillar drill in this case. Okay, so we've drilled a little distance in. It's time to pop a washer in and a nut, and I can see that we're still ever so slightly too shallow. So get the washer out, which is easier said than done sometimes, and we're going to drill just a little bit further. And don't get shavings in your eye like that. That was a very silly thing to do. With these, and with lots of all bits really, you want to make sure to clear out the bit repeatedly, otherwise you run the risk of it heating up and damaging your actual drill bit. should about do it. Ah, booty. Like it was made for it. Okay. Now that we've got the recess, we can cut in with our next bit. So, because we're using M10 thread bar, what M10 means is it literally just means it's 10mm thick. So, we're going to want to use a drill bit which is slightly larger than 10mm to enable the thread bar to spin freely. So this is a 13mm auger bit. Augers are another kind of specialty drill bit, but they're very good at drilling long holes with very clean edges. So because it's going to come out, we're going to want to make sure that there's nothing underneath, or we put a backstop in, which is probably actually a better idea. I'm going to get a backstop. So what a backstop is, it's just going to be a sacrificial piece of wood which is going to make sure that we don't get any blowout from the other end. And if you're smart, you clamp it, but I'm lazy. And there we have it. Ta-da! A nice, neat hole in either side. And now we're going to do the exact same thing with our crosspiece. So, as I'm still waiting for my pots to arrive, we will do what we can, which is we're going to put some fasteners on the bridle so that we can hang it up when we need to. So we're going to get ourselves a couple of eyelets. So last time I did one of these, I may have over-engineered it a little bit. I routed out a groove, I drove a nail through so that it sat through the groove, and I had a carabiner through the nail. It was much, much stronger, but in all honesty it was probably a little bit overkill. And I want to try and make this as achievable as possible, because it is already a kind of complicated system. So we're going to dispense with the routing and the nailing and then the cutting off of the excess nail and all of that, and we're just going to put an eyelet through each top, and we're going to put a carabiner on because that's nice and easy. Everyone can do that. As I said earlier, with screwing, you want to pre-drill whenever you can. Because the last thing that anyone wants is wood splitting at this stage, when you put all this time and effort into it. They came! Okay, so these are the pots that we are going to use. They all come with this horrible paper thing in it. These are £1.50 from Wilko's. So all in all, you're spending £6 on a really cool piece of enrichment. Everything else I had lying about. This is the only thing that had to get actually bought. Would have gone and bought them myself, but I'm in self-isolation at the moment, so it's a bit rubbish. So what we're going to need to do now is we're going to need to drill our holes for the food to drop out of these. So let's get that out of the way. As you can see as well, eyelets for carabiners, nothing particularly dramatic. And we're going to get ourselves our hole saw. Now, in my mind this is the dodgiest section. In fact, what I might do is I'm just going to pre-drill some smaller pilot holes in before I put the hole saw through to enable it to go in a little bit more easily, hopefully. That worked quite well, I thought. So obviously we're going to tidy up the edges a little bit, but that is the basics. Isn't that lovely? Quick check. It still fits. Now we're just going to do it with the other three. So that last one didn't go perfectly. As you can see, it gouged out a chunk, which upsets me horrifically, but at the same time is not actually going to affect the workable aspect of this enrichment iron, so I can live with it. Okay, so they've all had their holes cut in and they're roughed out. Now we're going to attach the lids to the X, to the cross piece. Now, in an ideal world, what you're going to be wanting to use to attach them are going to be a few of these bad boys, which are, I don't know if it will focus, it's focusing on my face. I don't know if it will focus, but this is a pan head screw, and it almost acts like its own little washer and will hold more surface area off the plastic, because obviously plastic is quite brittle. You don't want to go straight through, and you don't want these screws to get pulled straight through if something has a yank at it. But I only have 8 of these, so we're going to put 2 on each of them, and then we're going to put 2 more standard countersunk screws in as well, just to add to the strength. But the pan heads are what is going to give us most of the strength of the item. So we're going to kind of work it out. I'm going to rough it by eye, I'm not going to measure it all out. Let's move some of this stuff that we don't need off the table for the moment. Okay, and there we have it. It's pretty much done. We just need to assemble it now, so all we need to do is get some sort of thread bar, run it through, tension it up, and it will be a working piece of enrichment. What we're going to use to ensure that it will spin freely is we're just going to chuck in a load of washers, M10 washers. I'm going to use probably about 6, just because the more washers you use, the less friction there'll be, and the more chance it will be at spinning freely. People who are smarter than me might use bearings and stuff like that, but I don't really know how to use them, and I don't think it's strictly necessary. I get perfectly good results doing it this way, so I'm not going to muck about with bearings and risk looking like a tit. So I want to try and use up my odds and sods of thread bar, so I'm going to try with the smallest one first. If I find that that's too short, I will obviously switch to the bigger one. But first things first, just get this nylock. Always use nylocks when you're using anything that you want to spin, because otherwise a regular nut will just fall off. Caught it. Okay, so I've put it all together and I have measured it out, and I've realised that this one is still a little bit too long, so I've put a little bit of tape as to where I need to cut, and I'm going to cut this with an angle grinder. You can cut it with a hacksaw. It doesn't much matter as long as it gets cut. Oakley dokley. Let's try this again and see whether it fits this time. So you want want to have it so it's going to be leaving a little bit of excess, and we'll just grind that off when we're ready. Right, there we go. So we might loosen it off just a fraction to enable that to spin better. It's not an exact science. You just have to give it a play and find the medium that you're happy with, shall we say. That feels pretty good to me. Okay. Now we're going to shave off that bit. I think the smartest way to do it will be to pop the lids on so that we've got a nice even surface. Pop the bottoms on, not the lids, we've already got the lids on, the lids aren't going anywhere. So unfortunately yesterday my camera ran out of battery, so I had to finish it off myself without you guys, but it is now completed. The only things that I've done that I didn't show you were that I put a backing on there just to make sure that it sits comfortably against a wall and so that it can allow it to spin freely. And also I put a little plywood cap over the front just so that people don't see the bolt, so that it looks a little bit prettier. But that's about it really, so give it a go, see how you find. Let me know if you try on anything new and exciting that I haven't tried it on yet, and I will have another video as soon as I get around to it.